All right, let's get into it. Imagine, just for a second, that you're living through one of the most chaotic times your country has ever seen. We're talking civil war, society literally tearing itself apart. How do you keep it together? How do you even begin to find a way forward? Well, today we're going to look at one man, Thomas Fuller, who navigated that exact storm with this incredible mix of humor, faith, and just profound wisdom. This one quote, "An ounce of mirth is worth a pound of sorrow," man, it just says it all. This was his whole philosophy in a nutshell. While everyone around him was getting swallowed up by bitterness and anger, Fuller sought humor as this powerful, essential tool for keeping your perspective. It wasn't about ignoring the chaos, not at all. It was a conscious strategy for survival and for sanity. You know, to really get Fuller, you have to understand the world he was in. We're talking about the English Civil War, right in the middle of the 17th century. This was an absolutely brutal period of political and religious fighting. Royalists against parliamentarians, neighbor against neighbor. Talk about extreme polarization. And right into the middle of all this turmoil steps Thomas Fuller. Yeah, he was a churchman, a historian, a writer, but the thing that really made him stand out was his moderate stance. In an age where you basically had to pick a side, Fuller was the guy trying to find common ground. He used his incredible wit and his sharp mind not as weapons, but as tools to build understanding and maybe, just maybe, reconciliation. So, you might be asking, how in the world did he even try to do that? Well, one of his most powerful methods was to look backwards, to turn to history. Fuller had this idea that by looking at a shared past, the people of his time could maybe find a common identity that was bigger than all the divisions of the present. And his most famous work, The History of the Worthies of England, was a total game changer. This wasn't some dry, boring list of famous people. No way. Fuller created something totally new. He blended biography with these funny personal anecdotes and moral lessons. By celebrating what Englishmen from all walks of life had achieved, he was subtly reminding a broken nation of everything they actually shared. And he took that same balanced approach to the single most explosive topic of his day, religion. I mean, think about it. At a time when religious disagreements were literally the fuel for a war, Fuller sits down and writes a history of the church that's famous for being impartial. That was a truly radical act of moderation, trying to explain different sides instead of just condemning them. But his curiosity didn't just stop with England. He also took on this massive project, a detailed geographical guide to the Holy Land. And the title itself is so cool. A Pisgah site refers to the story of Moses seeing the Promised Land from a distance, from Mount Pisgah. So Fuller was giving his readers that same experience, a chance to see the world of the Bible without ever leaving their homes. And he did it by making the whole thing incredibly visual. This wasn't just a wall of text. He packed it with detailed maps and illustrations to make these faraway places feel real, feel tangible. For people back in the 17th century, this was revolutionary. It was like the high-definition documentary of its day, making these Bible stories feel so much more immediate and powerful. So Fuller wasn't just a historian. He was also a kind of moral guide. But he wasn't about standing on a pedestal and preaching at people. He taught by example, using real lives to explore the real consequences of both virtue and vice. His book, The Holy State and the Profane State, became hugely popular, and its structure was just brilliant in its simplicity. On one side, he'd give you lives to look up to, saints, good parents, wise leaders. And then on the other side, he'd give you the cautionary tales, tyrants, rebels, you name it. It was such a powerful, direct way to teach ethics using real-world examples. But here's the key. It never, ever felt like a lecture. This was Fuller's genius. He could make deep moral lessons feel engaging. His writing was just bursting with these witty little sayings and sharp, memorable descriptions of people. He made learning about virtue not just important, but actually entertaining. As the Civil War just dragged on and on, Fuller's writing started to get more personal, more reflective. He turned his incredible talent toward offering comfort and spiritual guidance for a whole nation that was just hurting. He wrote Good Thoughts in Bad Times as a direct response to the chaos. The title says it all, right? It was this collection of his own reflections, meditations, and prayers, basically a spiritual toolkit for anyone struggling. And people loved it. But the bad times? Yeah, they were about to get a whole lot worse. And as things went from bad to worse, Fuller was right there with his readers. Just 2 years later, he published the sequel,
And get this title, Good Thoughts in Worse Times. You can just feel the crisis escalating in that title alone. And this wasn't just more of the same. He went deeper, offering more urgent thoughts on how to hold on to your faith when it really feels like all hope is gone. So after looking at him as a historian, a moralist, a spiritual guide, what's the big takeaway? What is Thomas Fuller's ultimate legacy? Why are we still talking about this guy almost 400 years later? When you boil it all down, Fuller's legacy is that he's a timeless model for how to get through a deeply polarized world. He proved you could have strong beliefs without hating people who disagree. He used humor to disarm tension, and he was always looking for common ground, even writing a whole book about reconciliation. He just embodied this rare and powerful combination of wisdom, wit, and a deep sense of humanity.
And that really brings us to the final question, the one for right here and right now. Looking at our own world, with all of its arguments and divisions, what can we learn from a 17th century churchman who believed an ounce of mirth was worth a pound of sorrow, and that looking at our shared past might just be the best way to build a better future? That's definitely something we're thinking about.